Hi, welcome back to the channel. This video is the next in a series looking at the construction of an extension to a house. We went through the plans in some detail in the first video, but we've shown the bird's eye view here as this is really relevant to what we're doing today, which is the construction of the foundations. The extension itself is 6 meters long. However, there is an existing 3 meter long extension. So we're demolishing the roof for that and the interior, but we're keeping the 2 side walls. So you can see in this diagram here, we're showing the 2 side walls, and then where these arrows are coming onto screen now, that's where we're digging out the trench to create the additional 3 meter length for the extension. The house itself is 6 meters wide, so we'll be digging trenches today that are 3 meters on either side of the property and 6 meters across the back. And we'll be doing it to the standard depth of 1 metre, which is what's required by building controls to meet regulations. Please give us a thumbs up if you like what you see and subscribe, and we hope you enjoy the video. So here we are on site. Now the first job was to remove the paving slabs that were previously in the back garden. This was a patio that was sitting outside the old extension. So we've removed all of the slabs from the area that we'll be creating the trench. And now it's just a case of digging down. So you can see that we've got a Kango on site, the red piece of equipment on the floor there. That's basically a mechanical digger. That's really to break the top surface because it's been sitting under those slabs for a long time, for tens of years. So it's all compacted down and really quite difficult to break. So we're breaking it up with the Kango just to make it loose. And then we're having to shovel it all and put it into these buckets. We mentioned in the first video, this house is mid-terrace, and that means that it's basically sandwiched between 2 other properties. So there's no means of access down either side or round the back. So ideally, we would have easy access to the skip and be able to put all of the waste directly into it, or to be able to have some sort of machinery to be able to move everything. But unfortunately, we don't in this situation. So the guys are having to not only break up all of the subsoil here, so you can see the Kango's going in just to loosen up all of that ground, but then they're also then having to put it into buckets, carry it all the way through the resident's house, and then deposit it into a skip at the front of the property. So it does add a lot more labour time and a lot more effort to digging out these foundations than if we were able to just use either a mechanical process or a digger or something to be able to just take all that and put it directly into the skip. But you can see here, it's quite a laborious process. This ground is relatively hard. It's not solid concrete, but it's still compacted over the years. So it does take quite a lot of time to break up the ground. If you think we're doing a section across the back here, which is 6 meters wide, and we've got to do the 2 side sections as well, which are 3 meters each. So there's a lot of work that goes into firstly breaking up this top area, but then having to dig it out and transport it through, put it into the skip. So it's not an easy job and it takes a bit of time. Now we've just jumped to a shot from the rear of the garden, so we're looking back towards the house here. You can see the old extension where they've got small sliding patio doors and a window. So that will all be removed, as will all of that back wall. So we're keeping the 2 side walls we mentioned earlier, as the foundations have already been built for them and those walls are constructed. So it's much easier for us to leave them. You can see to the left and the right how close the houses are on either side. Both of these houses have extensions. So you can see on the left here, that's the extension for the house next door. So we don't really have a lot of room to play with down that section. So it would make it very difficult to rebuild that wall. So it's much easier for us to keep it and just to add on this additional form of foundation. Moving through to the front of the property, I thought it was worth showing you the skip, because obviously as you're digging out the earth at the rear of the property, it's having to go somewhere. And the problem you have is once the skip's full, then you have to stop work until you can replace it with the next skip. It's estimated that when you remove earth from the ground, so compacted soil, that it increases in volume by 30%. So you need to take account of what you're taking out of the ground and how often you're going to need to change your skip over, because you'll see here, You have to wait for the lorry to come, for them to put the new skip in place and take away the old skip. And the timing of that's really critical, because if you don't plan ahead and make sure that the guys are booked in, then once your skip's full and you have to tell the guys to stop digging out the foundation, that can cause you a real problem. So it's really important when you're managing your time and making sure that everything is lined up. So you need to take into account the weekends and how much lead time that the skip guys have in terms of coming to collect the waste and give you the new skip. Because what you don't want is the guys all downing tools because they've got nowhere else to put any of the soil once it's coming out of the ground. So you can see here, if you can get somebody time to come, do an early morning removal or late in the evening, then you know you can work up to a certain time, get them to switch it over, and then you're ready to go and carry on digging out. Because once you start doing the digging process, you really want to keep the momentum going, get those foundations dug as soon as possible. Because the other thing you're going to have to do with the foundations once they're all dug out is get building control out to check and sign off on them. And once they've done that, then you can start pouring the concrete and actually laying the foundation. But it's really important to get the timing of all of it right to make sure that you don't have any dead days and any time when you're just hanging around waiting for the skip guys to come and take your load away. If you've watched the first video, you'll know that we mentioned there was an air raid shelter previously in this back garden built in World War II. And we have actually found the concrete construction of that as part of the dig for the foundations. I thought I'd just show it here because it's quite interesting. Here's an image of what the Anderson air raid shelters looked like. They were semi-submerged, built from corrugated iron and then reinforced with concrete by the homeowner. So the section we can see in the trench here is actually looking at that front part. The lower part is where you would enter the air raid shelter, and then above it would have been all banked up with soil. So you can clearly see the shape and where the entrance hole for the air raid shelter was. We'll obviously have to remove that as part of the remaining dig for the foundations. But I thought it was an interesting find. Don't come across stuff like that very often. And a bit of history in this particular house. You can see a letter from one of the previous residents in video 1 as a link here. So here we are with the trench almost completed. We're having to be careful with this section on the left because there's a wall between the two gardens. We don't want that to collapse as we dig down underneath it. But the trench is now almost complete. You can see it does have water sitting at the bottom of it. That's predominantly because it's been raining quite heavily. You can see the ground's quite muddy. It was quite heavy rain as this was being dug out. So this is really just a temporary thing. It's not that we've come across surface water that's going to be in this trench permanently. This is literally just waiting for that to drain away. You can see this is an area with clay soil. It's quite claggy. You can see the clay on the sides. So it does tend to hold water once water gets in there. Jumping forward again, this is now the finished version of the trench. So this is ready for building control sign off. You can see the section here where the old air raid shelter entrance was. We've removed that now. And there is a little bit of water sitting at the bottom, but it's draining away slowly. This is really just some rainfall, so it's not groundwater that's going to cause a problem with the foundations. We're quite lucky here. There's no large trees or any other issues around this area that would cause us to have to dig down further or do anything more drastic. Building control have now been out and approved the trench. They're happy for us to lay the foundation, to pour the concrete. So we've got the same issue that we had with regards to digging out the trench itself, that we're not able to get anything mechanical through the house. We don't have any side access. So in an ideal world, we would have had a lorry with ready-made concrete coming and could have poured the foundations in a matter of minutes. But unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So everything is having to be done by hand. So we've got a cement mixer in the back garden, and all of the bags of cement and sand and water are having to be brought through the house to mix everything in the back garden and then pour it manually. So it takes quite a lot longer than it would do if we were able to do something more mechanical, but just the way it is in this situation. So you can see that we've got the guys mixing up sand, cement, concrete, making up the mix, and then they will be pouring that as and when each load is ready. They'll be pouring it all the way around the trench. So here we are a bit later on the same day, and you can see that the concrete has now been poured on the left hand side of the trench, so that's the finished level that we're aiming for the foundation. So it's literally just a case of constantly mixing up bags of sand and cement, waiting for the mixture to be ready, and then pouring it in and joining up all the foundations as we go along. Here we are a few hours later as the concrete started to set. So you can see here we've installed a bridge. This is because we're going to have to put some drainage pipes in here. So we've had to leave a gap so that we can put the drainage through, and that's because there's a manhole in the original extension, but we can come on to that in later videos. You see the Kango now having a rest after doing all the hard work earlier. But you can see the concrete has now started to set and form in place. This section here we're pouring later because of the wall that's adjoining between the two gardens. If we'd have dug all of that out and at the same time, there's a chance that that wall would have collapsed. And we also had some drainage there that we had to sort out from the old down pipe that was coming down into the ground in this section. So with this section will be poured a little bit later than the rest of the foundation. And here's a shot from the garden looking back at the property, so you can start visualizing what the extension will be like. Obviously that wall will come out where the window and the sliding door is, so it's going to be much bigger than what you can see here. This is actually just the 3-meter addition that we're doing, but the finished job will be a full 6-meter long new extension. Moving on to the very final section, we've now completed all of the concrete pour. So you can see the section on the left hand side as we're looking here is now completed. So once the rest of it had set, we were able to dig out that final bit of ground that we'd left in to make sure the wall didn't collapse. So you can see the concrete is now going much lighter. It's starting to set. We've got this section here that we're going to put some drainage through later. So we've had to leave a gap. Building control's happy with that. They have asked us to do the drainage to bring out a rodding section. And you can see the darker part in the corner here is freshly poured, so that's the last section that's been done, and that's gone in, and now everything is ready to go off to set and for us to start building the actual extension itself. One small thing to note here, we had a gutter across the old extension and had a downpipe that was going into the ground, so you can see that we've extended it forward so it looks a bit like a football goal. And that's really just to bridge out over into the garden to make sure as that water is coming off the gutter, it's got somewhere to go and it's not causing us a problem with flooding. So just a small tweak, but will make life a lot easier going forward. Thank you for watching. If you've liked what you've seen, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.